A conversation with 60 Minutes' Lesley Stahl.
Isn't he cool?
Wow, people love penguins.
Oh, they do. They do.
They do.
Lesley, you reported on zoos for 60 Minutes this week, and you met some memorable humans and some even more memorable animals.
That's for sure. Well, I'm an animal person. Oh my God!
Now this is Pepe.
Yeah?
He's one of our ambassador penguins.
The two of us. Boom. Chemistry right away. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I'm always going to remember this.
Viewers learn from your story that zoos are running some pretty sophisticated genetic breeding programs.
It knocked me out.
And that's a good pairing.
They actually do Match.com. They do, on a huge computer system. Zoos have to reproduce from within the zoo system around the world. If they didn't mix and match and find ways to create genetic diversity within a small population, yeah, the animals in those zoos would become very strange and they would die off.
So we have 3 potential females that can move.
And I didn't know anything about that. I don't think the public really knew much about it till it ran on 60 Minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were wondering whether the zoo-loving public has any sense that zookeepers are deciding which animals get to mate, who they get to mate with, whether they get to live or die.
Whether they get to live or die, that was the shocker. That's what happened to Marius, and this is where our story takes that dark turn. On a cold February morning, the zoo went ahead and ended Marius's life. Marius was a cause célèbre around the world when the Denmark Zoo euthanized this gorgeous, beautiful adolescent giraffe. They couldn't find a proper place for him.
His genes are still overrepresented in the population, so wherever he would go, he would take space up for genetically more important animals than our young giraffe.
Bengt Holst, the zookeeper in Copenhagen, he had a pretty cohesive argument for why killing Marius was the right thing to do.
Well, Bengt is not evil. You know, he loves animals. I never for 1 minute questioned his sincerity. I know you love animals. Was it hard?
It's always tough when you have to make these decisions, but I know it's the right thing to do, and so do our animal keepers.
So it's done with a gun?
It's done in this case with a gun, because then we could use the meat afterwards.
Wow. It was a difficult story emotionally, because you don't want to take sides when there are two sides as a reporter, and you try not to. And inside it was hard.
But is there also a sense of human arrogance in the story?
Human arrogance, on the one hand, of course. We're playing God, we are. But on the other hand, we're trying to save these animals who are being depleted so quickly off the planet. You could never get this close, ever.
Never, ever.
Ever. Oh, you're curious, aren't you? Marius has a half-brother who's getting to be the age that Marius was, and he could also be euthanized. He could be the next one. I must tell you, being here, they're just spectacular. They look healthy, but it's painful to think that you might have to kill one of them.
But why?
I don't know, because it's distressing.
Yeah, but I mean, animals, they die. They are born and they die. In the wild, they die. They die the same day they are born because they're eaten by a lion or by a hyena. That's what happens.
The reason it was an interesting 60 Minutes piece is because it really isn't black and white. There are a lot of gray areas.
Killing a healthy animal is killing. It's not euthanasia.
Ron Kagan from the Detroit Zoo adamantly opposes culling.
He talked about the importance of valuing the individual animal and not just caring for the population.
You know, sometimes when you do stories like this, whoever is talking sounds right. And then you have to step back and then weigh and measure. So when Bengt was telling us that, I'm sitting there saying, well, yeah, okay. get to the American Zoo, and they have a different perspective.
And that makes sense too.
Makes sense too.
This may be one of those 60-minute stories that causes some arguments on the couch after the program ends.
All tough questions. And people have to remember that there's a context. The context is that out there in the wild, there are fewer and fewer and fewer animals. And there will be a day, I think, when if you want to see a giraffe, you're going to have to go to a zoo.
Oh, look.
And so we better be rooting for them to continue their conservation work.
We better be rooting for zoos.
You better be rooting for zoos, because outside the zoo, it's getting very difficult for animals to survive.